Hi, welcome to People's Kids from Home. My name is Melkon, and this is Story Time. Today, we will be reading Room for the Baby, written by Michelle Edwards and illustrated by Jana Christie. Let's read together. Once on 18th Avenue, when someone had something they didn't need anymore, they gave it to my mom. Worn out sheets, yarn left over from knitting a sweater, a bolt of flannel from a tailor shop that went out of business. Everyone knew Mom would put it all to good use. With what she took, Mom made our curtains, our blankets, and even made herself a winter coat. What she didn't use right away, she saved for later. Mom filled our sewing room's corners, its nooks, and its crannies. Then, something happened that changed everything. I wonder what it could be. One fine spring morning, as we buttered our Passover matzos, Mom announced, "We are going to have a baby." Dad drew us together in a family hug. "Where will the baby sleep?" I asked. "The sewing room will be for the baby," said Mom. "I've always said I would use the things I saved. Now I will. You'll see." But I was worried. Could Mom really use up all that stuff before the baby was born? That afternoon, Dad carried the sewing machine to the dining room table. Mom and I gathered two big piles of worn out sheets that our neighbor, Mr. Liu, had brought over a few months before. All week, Mom tore and snipped and sewed. By Friday, as our Shabbat challah came out of the oven, she'd made dozens of soft diapers for the baby. Look at that little old lady with her dog. "My daughter is expecting too," said Mrs. Finkelstein from next door. "She'll need diapers like yours." I helped Mom bundle another batch of old sheets. Not one corner was empty. "There still isn't enough room," I told her. "Patience," said Mom. "You'll see." "What's next?" Dad asked. Mom pointed to a tower of suitcases. "Look at all of them stacked on each other." The rest of that spring, she unpacked all the pajamas that our downstairs neighbor's kids had worn when they were small. She took out the elastic, the snaps, and the seams. All summer, she cut and she pinned and she stitched. That autumn on Rosh Hashanah, we had apples dipped in honey for a sweet new year. And Mom had stacks of tiny sleepers and onesies and little shirts ready for the baby. "Cute," said Mom's friend, Mrs. Martinez. She had a 2-year-old. So did Mrs. Liu, as did Mrs. Liu's sister, also named Mrs. Liu. Mom asked me to bring them the stash of basketball jerseys from the teams my uncle coached. "My daughter needs some sleepers too," said Mrs. Finkelstein. She was over again. After the holiday, Mom sent me to dig out the lost and found box that the owner of the corner candy store had given us. Later, when I twirled around and around and around in the sewing room, I didn't bump into anything. "See?" said Mom. "Progress is definitely being made," said Dad. A few weeks later, just before Simat Torah, Mom showed me how to make a flag from chopsticks and half a sweater sleeve. While she unraveled a streamer trunkful of holy sweaters and mismatched mittens, I made a flag with pom-poms and yarn streamers and tucked it away in my sock drawer. After the unraveled yarn was washed and dried, I helped Mom roll it into balls. The rest of that autumn, Mom knit and knit and knit. That winter, on the first night of Hanukkah, it snowed. Mom had blankets for the baby and new mittens for Dad and me. When our upstairs neighbor, Mrs. Mack, brought us a plate of her homemade potato latkes, she stared at my mittens. "My Norman's hands are always so cold," she said. Mom asked me to find the hat box filled with balls of thick wool and metal knitting needles that Mrs. Finkelstein had given her. Now there were 3 empty corners. There was almost enough room for the baby, But I wasn't worried anymore. I knew just what to do. Early the next morning, Mrs. Maggio came and collected a stack of magazines. Mrs. Finkelstein came and requested only socks. She wouldn't tell me what they were for. Mr. Liu needed empty wooden spools. He told me they were for a secret project. Hmm, that sounds interesting. By noon, our friends and neighbors on 18th Avenue had taken back most of what everyone had given Mom. Now, there was room for the baby. Dad carried in the crib he had built from the steamer trunk. I washed the windows while Mom made curtains from the flannel that Mr. Epstein had given her when he'd closed his tailor shop. On the third night of Hanukkah, my sister Lily was born. She was pink and perfect, and so was her room. On the last night of Hanukkah, the two Mrs. Lius, Mr. Liu, Mrs. Martinez, Mrs. Maggio, Mrs. Mack, and Mrs. Finkelstein stopped by. Everyone had made a gift for Lily, and so had I. Once on 18th Avenue, when someone had something they didn't need anymore, they gave it to my mom. Now, we all know just what to do with worn sheets and socks and even empty wooden spools. We use and reuse it all, and sometimes we make something new. Thank you for sharing this time with us. Remember that we will be back with more stories next week. Can't wait to see you again.